Hi, this is Max Corman.
This is Quinn Daly.
Welcome back to another episode of The Reverse Shot.
A very belated episode, but
Very.
an emergency episode, as you will see later, because we needed to talk about this movie.
Yeah, okay. Before we quickly get into that, we did have a best of and worst of 2017 list, but the files got corrupted. So we're just going to quickly rattle them off, even though the Oscars are over and our opinion doesn't count anymore.
Yeah, you were just going to do, worst, least favorite 2 films of the year and favorite 3 films of the year. Max, why don't you start?
All right, so my favorite 3 from number 3.
You want to start with worst first?
Oh, sure. Well, my bottom 2 or 3 would be probably... I really was not a fan of The Boss Baby, and, I had a list. I can't find it right now, so I'm sure some movies I'm forgetting. The Bye Bye Man was pretty ridiculous, but I remember that didn't make my bottom 5. The only movie that I know is certain that is number 1 worst movie of 2017 is this Taiwanese movie I found called The Tagalong 2. This movie was offensive. It was hilariously bad. The lore was convoluted. I don't want to get into it right now, but it's not even so bad it's good, really. It's honestly one of my least favorite movies I've ever seen. Don't watch it. If you have to watch the first one, watch it, but whatever. And my top 3, or you want to do your bottom first?
All right, my bottom 2, Ghost in the Shell. I was not a huge fan of Ghost in the Shell. It was it was a mangled, confusing mess of an action movie that made a lot of weird changes in adaptation and somehow managed to make its own whitewashing scandal worse. That's not something that's good, and yet it's still not my least favorite of the year. That one has to go to Bright, which is exactly what you'd expect from a script written by a guy who has had multiple sexual assault charges, or at least sexual harassment charges pressed against him. It is a brown, obnoxious mess of a movie that wastes a whole bunch of good actors in pursuit of some of the worst attempts at social commentary I think I've seen in recent memory. That I can't really believe that the same year that gave us Get Out gave us Bright. So yeah, maybe you should skip that one.
Yeah, I didn't see Bright. I just
you're lucky.
I do like David Ayer. I think he is a competent director.
I don't think he's necessarily a bad director. I think that between this and Suicide Squad, he just seems to keep picking the wrong scripts.
Yeah, he wrote Suicide Squad, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think
a lot of people wrote Suicide
like, David,
Squad.
I have faith in you. Like, you make another good movie, make another End of Watch. Don't do Bright again. Apparently,
they're doing Bright too. That's his next project.
David, come on, get your head in the game. All right. My top 3 are obviously The Disaster Artist. What can I say? It's a masterpiece. The only problems I would really have is some issues near the end, especially with regards to Tommy Wiseau's character by the end. I know it's a true story, but he seemed rather not salvageable. What's the word? Like irredeemable to some degree, and never really paid for like that whole like nude scene. It's kind of funny in the book because everyone's just watching in horror, but in the movie you just see how messed up it is, and it was just kind of hard to watch. But it was still, other than that, it was like an amazing movie. I love the book, and I love the movie. Number 2, I, Tonya. Great dark comedy. It's a mixture. It's like got a bit of genre change halfway through. It's like it was just a really good movie. I could get into it, but I won't. And then my favorite was 3 Billboards, which is just another amazing dark comedy, because I love dark comedies, and this one was very much like a Coen Brothers South Korean crime. And what I mean by that is, if you watch South Korean crime movies, you'll know what I mean. But, dark comedy that slowly gets just pitch black. Anyway, that was my favorite movie. Quinn?
All right, my top 3. Number 3 would be Lady Bird, which is kind of Greta Gerwig looking at all the other coming-of-age movies and saying, you know what? I don't think these have been refined enough. Let's just narrow this down to the bone and do it as quickly and intensely as we can. And it's just 90 minutes. It moves like lightning. It hits so many different like emotional tones, and it's just it's a sort of traditional story done in my opinion, in the best possible way that it can be done. Number one and number two are very obvious choices. Number two is Get Out, because it's Get Out. It's an instant horror classic for a lot of reasons that I don't need to explain. It's got a brilliant script. It's pretty like subtly well shot. It's very creative in how it handles its social commentary. It's just an incredibly well put together horror movie. And my number one is the movie that won Best Picture, The Shape of Water, because it's a Guillermo del Toro movie. Would it ever be anything else for me?
But now that it's won Best Picture, everyone on the internet's going to say it's overrated.
I don't care. I love The Shape of Water. I literally just wrote a whole paper about it. It's a
great movie.
It's a beautifully done, really, really, like, it's a very Del Toro movie. It's got a lot of, like, his usual, like, genre shifts and really, like, really interesting takes on sort of sci-fi fantasy, and yeah, I love it, and it's my favorite film of last year.
It definitely deserved that Oscar win.
So on that note, let's talk about the Hurricane Heist.
Yes, so our emergency meeting came from Thursday night, which was last night.
Yeah.
We went to see a 10:20 showing of the Hurricane Heist.
On a whim, because we had just sort of heard whisperings about this movie, about how this was an absolute, like, train wreck of a movie. How this was just spectacularly bad and inept, and...
Like, I hadn't heard of it until we went to see Black Panther, and I saw a poster, and it said, from the director of Fast and Furious, and I'm like, I haven't seen that movie. The Hurricane Heist, that looks stupid. And I saw a trailer, and it looked stupid, because it had two amazing taglines.
Yes.
It was "Make It Rain" and $600 million stolen at 600 miles per hour. Very, that's tension grabbing right there.
Yeah, those are both pretty good taglines. I wish the movie could have stuck with one.
Now, they basically...
Which is sort of giving you an idea of where this is headed.
It's like, it's two different... It's a genre mashup of two genres. Now it's a tagline mashup of two terrible taglines. Amazing taglines. So we've kind of organized our thoughts. Because
first off, before we go, I need to get my opinion out of the way on this, which is that this film is a once-in-a-lifetime train wreck of a movie. This is like I half expect, like, there to be just an on-screen credit for Murphy's Law, because everything that can go wrong with the Hurricane Heist in terms of making a movie goes wrong. I cannot believe this was released in theaters.
And that's almost like the best part. If this was released on Sci-Fi Channel, I would laugh, and that's it. Yeah. The fact that this had a budget, 30 producers, which we'll talk about.
30 producers.
And 4 writers.
30 producers and 4 writers. There are more producers on this movie than there are actual members of the cast. Think about that. There were more producers than there were characters in the script.
And the fact that they then took this, saw it, and said, yeah, I think that this will make its money back in theaters.
30 people all thought the Hurricane Heist was worthy of a theatrical.
The fact is,
Annihilation was only released in theaters in the U.S.
Like that, Cloverfield Paradox.
The Cloverfield Paradox went straight to Netflix.
And granted,
not a lot of people like the Cloverfield Paradox. I liked the Cloverfield Paradox, but that went straight to Netflix. The Hurricane Heist got a full theatrical release, and it's absolutely the worst movie out of the 3. I don't know anymore.
It honestly feels like... So, like, for Cloverfield Paradox and Annihilation, those are both movies that I thought were fine. I wasn't huge fans of them.
You and I will disagree on Annihilation.
Annihilation I thought was fine. We could get into that later. But if that was sent to Netflix in other countries, and the fact that the Hurricane Heist was, it's like they say, all right, it's like if they saw, I don't know, they release, I'm trying to think of a good, Interstellar or something, straight to Netflix, and then see a really high budget Birdemic, and then put that in theaters instead. That's an exaggeration, but on terms of like Interstellar, but I mean, it is basically almost Birdemic levels of incompetence.
It is Birdemic with slightly nicer cameras and with slightly more and somewhat more incoherent action. Like when you're looking at Birdemic and another movie and you're saying, wow, I can actually tell what's going on in Birdemic's action, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, you can. Well, this has more than one connection to Birdemic that we will get into.
We will get into that. But I think where we do need to start with this amazing, beautiful, intoxicating, jaw-dropping train wreck of a film is with the opening scene, which sets the tone perfectly.
I should just say quickly, Quinn and I, throughout the trailers, we had the whole theater to ourselves basically, which was amazing because we were just like talking and riffing on the trailers and whatnot, and then just one single guy
guy comes in. He has like a water bottle or a flask with him. I'm wondering if it was full of alcohol.
That's what you need for this movie.
And he just sort of slumped over in the front row and just stared up at the screen. And there was a moment where I was convinced, is he asleep? Is he dead? Is there like a dead guy in the front row of the Hurricane Heist?
That's where people go to die nowadays. They just go
to
the Hurricane.
This is the new elephant. The Hurricane screenings of the Hurricane Heist are the new elephant graveyard.
But so we weren't able to talk as much because this guy was in the theater. But if you are able to get this movie just with you and your friends,
just an
that's
empty
a gold
theater.
Mine.
This movie would not feel out of place on an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000, is what I'm saying.
So anyway, before I interrupted you, we were talking about the opening scene.
The opening scene. Okay, let me lay out the opening scene. So it's 1996, right?
It's 92.
92.
You got to get these numbers right. This is a very
Yes, I need to get it precise
thing
for the hurricane. It starts in 92 with a hurricane, sort of right in the middle of the hurricane. So like a dad and his two kids are sort of
Breeze and
meteorologist, because there is really no character to our main character. He is just...
We'll talk about the characters after.
We'll talk about that later. But anyway, this father and his two kids, Breeze and meteorologist, are sort of just trying to drive away from this hurricane, and then the dad suddenly catches a terminal case of the stupids, and he decides, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop the car. I need to change this thing up. Kids, go get in that deeply unsafe-looking wooden house right in the middle of the hurricane while I go to chain it up. And then there's this water tower next to him. So as you can probably guess, since this is a generic action movie and we need like a traumatic event for the main character, the kids end up watching as this silo, like on top of like a water tower, comes down, hits the ground, and starts rolling like the Boulder from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and runs over the dad. And this is presented in like a Looney Tunes way. Like, it's like a steamroller running over Wile E. Coyote. I half expected to hear like a boing sound effect at that. And that's not even the silliest part of this scene, because do you want to describe what happens next, Max?
Yeah, so let's see. The house starts shaking. Even though outside it doesn't look that windy from when you're inside the house and looking out. You know, outside all the CGI makes it look like a pretty nasty storm, but then the house falls apart and these kids are on the ground. They look up. This is not a supernatural storm, but there is a CGI skull cloud that starts like hissing at them or something.
No, roaring. It straight up roars at them. It just like the clouds suddenly turn into like this giant skull of death and roars at them. And that's the opening sequence of the movie. This is how the Hurricane Heist starts.
It honestly reminded me of, you remember in Harry Potter Goblet of Fire, the whole skull in the sky with the snake coming out and stuff? I just thought that the Death Eaters were around and that this was just like a coincidence that a hurricane was happening. Like, this had different
Apparently,
stories.
The rights to Harry Potter now belong to the producers of this film Entertainment Studios Motion Pictures, which is the funniest name for a studio. It's like they could have.
That was the actual name.
They could have called it Cinema Movie Films, and they'd have a better name for a studio than Entertainment Studios Motion Pictures.
This was a very entertaining movie, though. So the production.
It is entertainment. It is exactly what you'd expect for a film from Entertainment Studios Motion Pictures.
But don't worry, but regarding this CGI Death Eater skull, so I think I know what they're trying to go for. I think it's trying to be like the kids, like
traumatized by the hurricane,
and so he imagines it. I don't know. It's not really clear. I don't
know.
But it comes back for the final chase scene.
Yes,
and it is amazing.
Like at the end of the final chase scene. Like, meteorologist looks out the rearview window, and in the rearview window, you see those friggin' skull cloud coming back and killing him. And Max is completely convinced that this is the same hurricane from 22 years earlier. This is the same
skull. It was the same skull.
It's the same hurricane that killed his dad. It's like a Jaws sequel. The shark somehow survives the first movie and then comes back to try and kill the family.
This was like Jaws' revenge, you know? Is the shark, the hurricane's like... it's like, I remember you, meteorologist kid. I'm going to hurricane you. I don't know what hurricane... I don't know what the verb for being hurricane is.
I'm going to kill you with this giant wall of death that is totally scientifically accurate.
But just the opening, and you see this big CGI skull roaring at them.
And it's not there's nothing else that's supernatural in this movie. It's just the giant skull cloud.
So then at that point, you realize what you're in for.
You realize that you're in for a movie that is just going to go off the rails.
So now you want to move on to our second point. Characters and character development and
character development and character arcs, and how this movie was apparently written by professionally published screenwriters who somehow do not understand any of those previous concepts.
Our main villain, because our villains are the more interesting characters.
The villains are the heroes of this movie. I need to establish this right off the bat. The villains are more likable and have a better motivation and are more interesting than any of our heroes. Because when the villains, they show up for this hurricane heist, because the whole thing is that they figured out this victimless crime, that there's a bunch of money that's going to sort of a shredder in Alabama, and they figured out, okay, we can steal it and get away with $600 million. And when they show up, they're not trying to kill anybody. They've just brought, tranquilizer darts with them, and they're shooting people with tranquilizer guns to make sure nobody dies. And they're taking hostages, and they want to make sure nobody dies. And it's like, okay, why are these guys not the heroes? The problem is that this could have been a really good movie if it had been about them. If it had been like Ocean's 11 meets Fury Road. That would have been awesome.
Right. So it's the main villain. A villain, I use in quotes, but he's more like an anti-hero. Because our heroes, I will tell you, are evil.
Yes,
they
are psychopaths.
But he is Discount Alan Rickman. He's trying to be...
He is Schman Schmoober, which is what I nicknamed him. Because he definitely is not Hans Gruber from Die Hard. Definitely not. And he's played by the guy who played the dad in The Witch. So this guy actually has... This guy's a pretty good actor, and he does pretty well with what he's given. He's the most interesting character in the movie.
So... his character, he's the only character with somewhat of a character arc. But he
sort of slowly descends into desperation and violence as sort of everything in this heist goes wrong. And that's
because of our main characters. So granted, his whole plan, it's a relatively victimless crime because this is money that's going to be shredded, and he wants to take it because he wants to retire.
And and he doesn't want people to get hurt.
Yeah, he uses tranquilizers. Because it's a PG-13, so he uses tranquilizers, and and
it's a PG-13, even though a lot of people get shot and killed in this movie.
Yeah, I want you to win. And then our other characters, Breeze, meteorologist, and Maggie Grace, decide to murder everyone to stop him.
Everyone.
And this guy is just has enough of these people just doing terrible things.
Yes, because our protagonists are terrible. I think for a good example of that, we need to talk about Maggie Grace's first scene. We need to talk about the first scene with Maggie Grace and Schman Schmoober. So they're introduced in this
truck.
They're in this truck that's driving this money to be shredded, and they're trying to get through this sort of lineup of cars that are parked outside because this hurricane about to hit Alabama, which is why it's called the Hurricane Heist and not just the heist. So Maggie Grace starts getting really impatient that nobody's moving. So she tells Schmanz, let me take the wheel. So Schmanz gives her the wheel, and she guns the engine and plows into the car in front of her, trying to get to move. And when that doesn't work, she pulls back and then just starts tearing through a nearby field. And then Schmanz points out
their crops.
that she's destroying their crops, and she's like, it's tobacco crops. What's there with a little less cancer in the world? It's like, this woman is one of our heroes, and she continues to indiscriminately kill people. Our heroes are indiscriminate killers.
Yeah, seriously. So here's what they need from Maggie Grace. Maggie Grace, come here, give us a code, no one gets hurt, we get the money that would otherwise be shredded, we leave, everyone's happy. What she says is, I can't. Why not? Because... And then they murder everyone. And then, seriously, if this movie was told from the bad guy's point of view and these heroes were just the bumbling villains, like the bumbling idiots, it would be like a funny Coen Brothers dark comedy.
It needs to be said that the scene where Maggie Grace fails to explain why she just can't give it up has one of the worst settings for that kind of scene, because it takes place while she and meteorologist are taking a pee break. It's a conversation as they're just sort of facing away from each other and sort of peeing behind different pillars in the middle of a shopping mall parking garage. And I don't know why they chose to have this scene with them just... It's why they're pissing in the scene. Why we needed them to piss while they're having exposition. I don't get why that's there. Why they chose that.
And so, I mean, this can't be understated. These characters, these main characters, are so unlikable. And the villains, like, the villain, they end up killing basically everyone.
Yeah.
And our villains, we're getting into spoilers. They kill one person because they pushed our villain too far, way too far. And I kind of, you know what? I'm still kind of putting that on Maggie Grace, because she...
the villains have vastly more defined personalities, although part of the problem is that this is probably just a lot of the action, which we'll get to later, but I had no idea who was alive or dead at any point in the movie, because I had to check and like, wait, is that member of your team dead? Is that member? I don't know who's alive or dead. I don't know who's left anymore. There are a few defined members of the team. There's not Hans Gruber. There's Schmanz, not Hans Gruber. There's
Hacker girl.
There is British Hacker and his inappropriately dressed girlfriend, who I think are supposed to be sort of like who's supposed to be like this confident, cool-headed one, and his like sort of hothead girlfriend, like
Bonnie and Clyde?
Like Buddy and Darling from Baby Driver was what I was going to say. Like, that's sort of, I thought, more of their deal. But it's even more exaggerated because not Darling from Baby Driver comes in, is supposed to be disguised as a computer technician, but she's wearing this blue and black mini dress and high heels, and she has not... And, like, a Matrix overcoat?
Yeah, she has
not dressed for this heist at all. Everybody else is coherently dressed. She looks
like she's going to the ball or something.
She is dressed for a high society auction. She is not dressed to hack the treasury.
We'll get to hacking later.
The hacking is phenomenal.
But so
there's that. There's Xander. There's Xander, who's
because Triple X, same director.
There's evil Southern misogynist sheriff who I swear is related to Sam Rockwell from Three Billboards, because both of them are named Dixon, and they're also sort of Southern sort of legal functionaries who are kind of scummy. So I am, and he kind of looks like an older version of Sam Rockwell. So I am just convinced that is like.
But Sam Rockwell had one of the best character arcs of the year. This guy has no character.
To
have an arc,
he hasn't really had his. He has one of the weirdest parts of the movie because the movie takes the whole. Oh look, there was an inside man. Here's who it was, and they pull that twice. They pull the same twist 2 times in a row, and I don't know why they needed it.
And because they get resolved really quickly. But anyway, I mean, we could talk in circles about these characters.
We could talk about Breeze,
who looks like Train Spotting Chris Hemsworth. I think. You don't think he looks?
I thought Train Spotting Chris Hemsworth. Breeze, or he should properly be called Trainsworth.
Trainsworth. Meteorologist whose name we should probably actually I don't want to figure it out.
I don't know. It doesn't really matter. He's just meteorologist. We have Maggie Grace. We have
Maggie Grace.
We need to mention that Trainsworth has a bunch of guns in his apartment, and the only reason he gives is that he's in Alabama.
I thought that was kind of an Alabama citizen.
But why would he keep them hidden if he's in Alabama? What reason would he have? If he's in Alabama, they have open carry, right? You can keep your guns openly. Why does he need to keep them hidden under a board in the back of his closet? What purpose does that have, except for throwing in like a sudden last-minute armory reveal?
That's never really used. Yeah, I mean, that didn't really surprise me. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Breeze has a secret gun hideout area.
Fair. It is Alabama.
Yeah.
Or it's supposed to be Alabama, because we discovered I walked into the theater to pick up my jacket after it, and what I discovered was this was all filmed in Bulgaria. This is a film that says, you know what looks like Alabama? Bulgaria. Bulgaria. I still can't believe that. Like,
again,
this movie breaks my brain the more I try to think about it.
It can't be stated enough. Like, if every scene, everything that goes wrong is our hero's fault.
It is all
and they
their
have
fault.
No remorse. They have no character. They're two-dimensional or one-dimensional. And it's just, I seriously, I can't think of a movie where I rooted for the villain, like even though I wasn't supposed to, where I rooted for the villain more than this movie.
All you people who saw Black Panther and were like, yeah, Killmonger was like the best character in the movie. You have no idea.
Well,
you are not prepared for the Hurricane Heist.
Because
Hurricane Heist makes Killmonger look like Darth Vader by comparison.
Well, it's like people throw around. I was rooting for the villain all the time. This takes the cake.
Yeah, we'll get to some of the specific mechanics later when we get into the action, because there's a lot to discuss there. But I think we need to move on to our next point.
Dialogue.
There is some astonishing dialogue in this movie. And I think it needs to start with the performances, because there are some actually qualified actors here. You have, let me check. Let me pull up this. You have Toby Kebbell, who's been in Black Mirror.
Maggie Grace.
You have Ralph Ineson, who was in The Witch. And these are qualified actors.
And it's directed by the hidden third Coen brother, Rob Cohen.
We're convinced that Rob Cohen is like the third Coen brother who Joel and Ethan don't really talk about, and who doesn't really get invited to the
family reunions.
Because this is like an ersatz, like you said, this is like an ersatz Coen brothers movie where everything went wrong, and not in the crime, in the filmmaking. Like, so one of the things is like Toby Kebbell is a good actor. I like him. One of the problems here is the accent he has to do, because this is a movie filled with like British and Australian actors that takes place in Alabama, and everyone in it's American. So that means we get some of the worst Southern accents I've seen in a long time, or heard. Well, Kebbell's accent, it might have worked as a Southern accent, except there's this weird thing he does with it where it's like his mouth is full of marbles. So it's like he's gargling every line. Like he's gargling And he's not even the worst accent. There's a police officer in a scene we get to later that is just barely trying to hide the her Australian accent under a Southern accent, and it's just astonishing.
And then 90% of the dialogue
is
exposition.
Exposition
that is like
pointless and blunt, except the other 10%, which is just deranged.
But seriously, it's like usually movies like this, you want to get the exposition out of the way. Say, "Oh, hi, brother. Oh, hi, sister. Oh, the character's relation." This just does it, and you do that at the beginning, get it out of the way. This does it the whole way through. Adding new plot points, adding new characters.
We'll get back to the plot points later. But we'll get back because there's a lot to talk about.
It's honestly one of the worst written movies I've seen in terms of dialogue.
Oh, and we haven't even gotten to the golden moments of dialogue.
They have a they have a conversation. The director or the writer, one of the 4 writers, thought they were Tarantino by having a cool discussion about nothing. Instead, they're talking about peanut butter and jellies.
It's about the right way to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. They're debating over whether to use Jif or Skippy in their peanut butter sandwiches.
It's the most bizarre product placement. In the middle of an
actual action movie. They stop the plot to talk about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And this isn't the only time they do this, because they decide, you know what, we need to make our movie socially relevant. So there's this scene where Maggie Grace and meteorologist are in their car, meteorologist's car, we'll get back to the car later, and they're talking about the hurricane, and then meteorologist stops the plot dead so he can lecture for 3 or 4 minutes about climate change, about how these hurricanes are caused. That's our Birdemic parallel. He lectures about how these hurricanes are caused by climate change and how it's going to be creating Category 6 and Category 7 hurricanes. And
it was just as out of place in Birdemic, where it just comes out of nowhere.
Hey, at least there were multiple scenes in Birdemic, so you could argue it was a running theme.
3.
There were 3. That's enough for a pattern. This movie has 1. It has 1 scene where they vaguely acknowledge this, and then it goes nowhere. And there are a couple golden, individual lines I like. There's,
my personal favorite line I have, it's, freaks, us freaks just hacked into your shredder. Weeks ago.
They take
you
such
hacked into
pride
a shredder?
into hacking into... You didn't hack into the actual building or the codes weeks ago. You just hacked into the paper shredder.
And she was so defensive because someone called her, it was the fancy girl and her boyfriend, who were apparently the baby driver people.
Yeah.
And she was so offended that they called them freaks, and she's like, I hacked into your shredder. They're like, cool. And
my favorite line, though. My favorite line is, the sheriff had a plan inside a plan the whole time. Because it turns out, totally not Sam Rockwell from 3 Billboards turns on everybody.
Triple crosses.
It's a triple cross. This thing wishes... I thought of the old Crisscross, the old noir for a moment, but it's this thing does not deserve to be compared to something as good as Crisscross.
And another great piece of... This is one of those movies that has the dialogue, I need to hack into blank's mainframe.
Yes.
I need to hack into the mainframe. Because that's hacking.
Another great line. All we needed... I'm going to try to do Southern Chef for a moment. All we needed was 1 little hurricane, and you couldn't even get that right. All we needed was 1 little hurricane. I don't know why he's mad at Schmanz in this moment, because Schmanz isn't responsible for the hurricane. We have to talk about the not actually the issue moment now, because it's one of the worst moments of dialogue. So right in the finale, Maggie Grace has been captured. Why? We'll get back to that later, because the plot points of this movie are an absolute mess. And she's killed this guy's brother. What was the guy? Xander.
No, that wasn't Xander. That was
Xander's brother. She's killed Xander's brother.
It wasn't Xander.
She's killed Xander, and then Xander's brother is holding her at gunpoint.
I think Xander was a different guy. The brothers were a different character altogether.
I don't know. All right, she's killed one of the brothers, and this other brother... See how hard it is to describe this movie? Because it is both forgettable and unforgettable at the same time. So she's killed this guy's brother, and now he's holding her hostage. He's like, you killed my brother, and now I'm going to kill you. And she says right out of nowhere, I think you have issues with women. Okay, look, I am a self-conservative feminist. I'm like, yeah, this is a good issue. We need to be talking about it, especially in the wake of Weinstein. But first of all, this is not the time and the place because you're running through the eye of a hurricane and trying to escape. And second, you did kill his brother. You actually did kill his brother. You don't really have that much room to try to get leverage here. I hate to say this, but he has a point. Yeah. You killed his brother.
I honestly don't think anything he said really represents him being angry specifically towards women in general.
Like, totally not Sam Rockwell is much worse. He kind of has this, like, leering sexual air and makes a lot of inappropriate remarks. So, yeah, he's a creep, but this guy really hasn't done much to make us... He's just angry because he's not angry because she's a woman. He's angry because his brother's dead. That's not the... You realize that you're not helping feminism right here. You're trying to make... Yeah, you can't by having your, like, trying to throw in a girl power woman for an unlikable so-called heroine who has murdered a bunch of people and won't actually let this crime proceed peacefully for really no good or well-defined reason. You are not making a good case for feminism right here.
I also want to bring up, we're very unorganized right now, but I want to bring up another piece of dialogue. It's more of like it's another exposition scene.
Yeah.
So, how often do they talk about the Eye of the Storm being the best way to escape a heist? Because I remember only once. Because
like an hour into the movie.
Exactly. So there's this idea, I forget what it's called, but it's like if you show a gun on the wall in the beginning of the story...
Chekhov's gun.
Then you better later in the story, someone's going to use this gun. And it's got to be used like if you're going to have them escape through the eye of the hurricane, and you got to set that up earlier. You got to explain, like it's beautiful inside the. There's
this
nothing.
This in terms of Chekhov's gun. This movie is Chekhov's NRA because it's just filled with Chekhov's guns that seem to appear and disappear with no real reason and then just come out of nowhere and end up backfiring in a way that causes lots of damage.
So the fact that they just introduced...
Political commentary!
The fact that they just introduced this whole... this whole plot of going through the storm right when it happens, it's honestly like they're in the storm, then all of a sudden it becomes sunny out and they're like, that's the eye of the storm. This is how they're going to escape. This happens out of nowhere. That's like, they didn't set this up at all. This just happened.
And this brings us to the next section of our review, which is the plot points.
Plots that go nowhere.
And this is where you develop a drinking game for this movie, because what you need to do is you need to set up a drinking game where you take a shot every time a plot thread comes out that either comes out of nowhere or goes nowhere. And I think we have a lot of them to cover. Okay, let's start with the sheriff's secret plan inside a plan. Because, the sheriff, this is totally not Sam Rockwell, has decided that he's going to...
triple cross
Schmunz and his gang by... I'm not sure. What was his plan? He was just going to walk in there with 5 guys with guns and just tell them, I'm in control of this now? When did he set this up? Where did those guys come from? I thought he told them all to leave because of the hurricane. I don't know I don't know where his plan comes from, or this double cross. Especially since it's not really well set up that he's going to betray them, and you forget he's in the movie for like 20 minutes.
Can I explain how this is resolved?
Yes.
Immediately once he says, haha, we're going to double cross you, Hans Gruber, discount, shoots him.
Kirkland's signature Hans Gruber.
Just shoots him. He dies. The police don't fire back. And then they're like, hey, you want to join our team? And then they say, like, sure.
Yeah. And yeah, they have a bunch of disposable muscle now. And that also goes nowhere because they die like 5 minutes later. So yeah, that nothing happens with that.
Another great one is, hey, see your meteorologist truck? We can use that for
a car bomb.
Yeah, they have this whole debate about if he can use it as a bomb.
And he doesn't want to give it up, and then he's convinced by Maggie Grace to use it as a bomb. They go to get fertilizer and stuff to make him to a bomb. Bad guys ambush them. The car ends up stuck in a tree. Maggie Grace gets captured, and the car bomb goes absolutely nowhere. It's just an excuse for Maggie Grace to get captured, which she does in the worst way possible by just floating into Kirkland's signature Hans Gruber's hands, unconscious, on an air mattress.
Seriously, it's like, I'm all for, subverting expectations. This is not how you do it.
This is not how you subvert expectations. Okay, another plot point.
Because at this point I was expecting it to go nowhere, because so many other plot points.
Another plot point that goes absolutely nowhere. Right at the beginning of the movie, you're shown inside this treasure truck that they're using to haul money that's about to be destroyed. And there's a friggin' minigun in there. There's a military-grade minigun in the back of this money truck. And it looks like it's the only thing in the truck. They don't really show the money in the truck. They just show the minigun. And you're like, okay, this is kind of clumsy, and I don't know why that's there. But hey, they're going to come back to it in the end, right? You're going to have bad guys in the back of the truck firing the minigun at the heroes as they try to escape. Nope, that never comes up again. Never set up for nothing. Never comes up again.
There's my favorite subplot was that doesn't go anywhere is so they capture all the soldiers, they're all knocked out, they forget about them, and by the end of the movie they're left down there while a hurricane is coming, and we can only assume that they all die.
Yeah, our heroes just left a whole bunch of soldiers to die because they never mentioned them until like the halfway point of the movie, and they stopped mentioning them after that. Yeah, like, these hostages are all dead. These hostages are all dead, and it's your fault.
Well, where else would they? If they were out of there, they would have helped with the final chase scene. So you have to assume that they're still there or stuck.
And then there's the government. There's the plot with the government that stops halfway through. Because a meteorologist is sort of trying to pull this whole classic disaster movie thing with the government where he's saying, you're underestimating this storm. This is going to be maybe a Category 6 or a Category 7. They're like, nah, it's not going to be. And then the movie forgets about them for 30 minutes, and then the movie comes back to a scene like right near the end of Act 2 where they're looking at a board and saying, my God, he was right. It's going to be a Category 6. And that's the last you see of them in the movie. There's nothing else with them in the rest of the movie.
Pointless character. Let's also talk about, what was I going to say?
Breeze coming back from the dead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, characters, especially Breeze, just appearing and disappearing from the story out of nowhere.
He shows up after the fertilizers, after the sort of Home Depot-ish store raid, and he shows up in a boat. We have no idea where he got the boat. We have no idea what happened to him before a scene we'll get back to later because it is the highlight of the film, and he just seemed to disappear after that, and he shows up completely alive in this boat that he has presumably stolen, and he never mentions how he got it.
That's how, like, there's a scene where they have to save the brother that we'll get back to. They leave him. He's unconscious. He's probably dead. Then, 10 minutes later, the seawall breaks, destroying everything. Water floods in. Then all of a sudden, the brother's just there in a boat that I guess he hot-wired or something and rode on the wave after it broke the seawall. And he's now just there. He's no longer unconscious. He's just there. And,
Oh, I just remembered something I mentioned earlier today because I didn't notice it until earlier today, and then I forgot about it, then I just remembered it. What about Kirkland's signature Hans Gruber's girlfriend? Like, Kirkland's signature Hans Gruber has, there's a black woman who's part of his team,
was that literally his girlfriend?
Yeah, because she gives him a kiss. She's literally, the only person of color in the movie, and she doesn't even really die. She just disappears from the movie. I don't even think she does a death scene. She just vanishes out of the movie, and
she got bored.
It's kind of especially weird because it's like, this is in Alabama. There are a lot of black people in Alabama. She's the only black person in the whole movie. I'd say, even at least
there was one soldier.
Okay, there were like 2 black people in the whole movie. I mean, of course, it's because this isn't Alabama, it's Bulgaria, and I don't really know how many black people are in Bulgaria, but she's the only real, like, prominent black person in the movie, and she just vanishes out into nowhere. She doesn't even get a death. It's weird.
Let's see. So, characters...
She gets literally one scene.
Characters are disappearing and reappearing out of nowhere. Let's talk about now. There's so much to go into this movie.
We're barely even halfway.
We can't even scratch the surface, even after all this. But hacking in the movie.
Hacking. Oh my god.
So
if you love 90s movies that have extremely unrealistic depictions of how computers and hacking work, then you are going to love the Hurricane Heist, because this has some of the best bad computer hacking I've seen outside of CBS police procedurals.
And he's seen Fateful Findings.
I've seen Fateful Findings.
I love Fateful Findings. That's a masterpiece.
If you haven't seen Fateful Findings, it's basically the next The Room.
These guys were the kin of Neil Breen's character, because they were...
But they have better looking technology, because it's all about cool looking computers that don't really do anything. So I have to explain the system by which they secure the money. So, because it's the most over-designed and ridiculous piece of security. So it looks like they have 2 different operating systems. So first of all, there's this Mission Impossible style sort of voice and eye recognition system that sort of recognizes Maggie Grace's voice and then scans her eyes. And as it's doing so, you see for a split second that it's listing her entire resume on the computer. That it's running through, this is where she graduated from college, this is where she worked here, then worked here. Why does the computer need to scan your resume? It's not hiring you for a job. I don't understand why they need to put the resume on the computer. And that's not even the worst part of the security system. Because then you get to the part where she has to plug her iPad in and open up an app. And the app is completely ridiculous, is some bizarre Tron style stuff going on with this app, because it shows up this flashy grid thing with a bunch of like zippy blue lines going across it, and then it just pops up a bunch of like big cubes with numbers in them, and that's the code to unlock the door. And then when she resets the code, it delivers like this spinning wheel of computer graphics where it's just flashing the numbers one after the other as it reprograms the code. Also, speaking of numbers, there are at least 3 different 555 numbers in this movie. Most movies reserve it to just 1. There are 3 different 555s.
I just want to reiterate one more time. Maggie Grace knows that these people, I'm pretty sure she knows that these people are only tranquilizing people. And they give her a deal, give us the code so we can take the money, we'll let your friends go. And she says, all right, you give us 2 of your friends, 2 of my friends, 2 of the hostages, I'll put in the code, then you release everyone else. We'll get back to what she does instead. She is such an unlikable character.
I don't know why she's even a hero.
All of them are unlikable characters, but like...
It would have been interesting if maybe she, like, if it turns out, like, the reason she was trying to get rid of them was that she wanted the money
for herself.
That would have
been more sense.
That would have been more interesting. Like, maybe that would have made sense why she's killing all these people. Like, she had her own plan and they're getting in her way.
Now...
It would have been silly, but it would have made more sense than what was in the actual movie.
Aside from hacking into shredders and whatnot...
Hacking.
Oh, God. We have to talk about... are we done with hacking? Or
I'm just trying to... I think I described the computers in this do not look like real computers. They're all movie computers, which means they have weird future OS designs.
It's a movie where someone talks about hacking into mainframes. You know what kind of hacking movie it is.
And it's also got like stuff... While we're on the subject of hacking, I think we need to have a detour from what we had on your list, and we need to talk about the terrible science. Because this movie has no idea how science works.
It does not... What do you mean?
It does not understand science. Like, okay, so the regular cell phone bars and towers aren't working in the hurricane. Okay. But this satellite relay they put up was, even though there are probably other satellite relays in the area of the hurricane, and those are down, why would the one they put up not be down? That doesn't make any sense to... It's just an excuse for the plot to run, but we'll get back to the true... The hurricane itself is just a bizarre mess of bad science.
Like, I'm not a science guy, so I couldn't critique their how they presented the storm.
I was a science nerd when I was a kid. I know a lot about this stuff. This movie has no idea how weather works. This movie has no idea how weather... Like, the hurricane constantly seems to be changing based on whether the plot needs it. Sometimes it's just like a gentle breeze that sort of rustles the doors. Sometimes it's basic... Sometimes it's just gale force winds. Sometimes it's literally just a tornado.
Yeah.
And then there's the eye of the storm, which has this... Which
makes everything dry immediately.
Which makes everything dry immediately and also repairs the trees and all the things it's knocked down. And also seems to disappear at the end of the movie once the villains have all been defeated. The hurricane just vanishes.
Yeah.
And then there's the wall of death, which is like the edge of the eye of the storm, which is this just swirling wall of...
Which we assume they've gone through to get to the eye of the storm.
Which I also presume was just copiously stolen from Mad Max Fury Road as an image. And which I presume surrounds all parts of the hurricane. That if they'd gotten into the eye of the storm, they would have gone through part one of the walls of death, which means that How did they not dead? And then it's also really weird because the wall of death keeps randomly changing positions. Like, oh, now it's coming up fast. No, now it's a while away. This is not how weather works. And I'm fine with sort of fudging the rules on science in order to do it. Like, I know lasers can't make sound in space, but having just pew-pew noises during the Star Wars laser battles makes it all the more entertaining. As Laura Dern can probably tell you. Look it up.
I think that even the weather itself that's presented is incredibly inconsistent. Yeah. There are scenes where people are flying and getting sucked up into the air.
We'll talk about that.
A moment later, they're just lightly rattling the door. Then all of a sudden, it's breaking storm walls and water's flooding. Then all of a sudden, it's just like a mist with some wind. Then it's like it's completely inconsistent. And then all of a sudden, they're like, it's a mild wind. Then all of a sudden, they're in the eye of the storm. Apparently, they went through the wall and now are in the eye of the storm. So, there's just no rules to how powerful this storm is. There's no consistency. It's just like whatever the plot needs, however powerful the plot needs it to be, is how powerful the storm will be.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the CGI.
Oh man. Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Are you talking about the balloon people?
Are we talking about the mall scene? Is it time to talk about the mall scene?
All right, we'll hold off on CGI and talk about my favorite scene.
We'll hold off on the mall scene later because the mall scene
first or CGI?
We'll hold off on the mall. What do we talk about now?
So we were talking about the CGI was just...
the CGI is bad. It's bad, and the CGI...
wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it was pretty horrendous.
And that brings us, I think, into the action, because this action is astonishingly badly directed. And you look at Rob Cohen's filmography, he made the first Fast and the Furious movie. He started off one of the most popular film franchises in the world. And then you look at this and you start to wonder, how did he do that? Because the action in this is very bad.
For a movie that was kind of sold as a... So, I'm thinking more of the ending. But first I'll talk about, like... So it is edited like a Transformers movie in terms of
it's just constant cutting. And it's not even that in the action scenes. The dialogue scenes are just constant cutting too.
It's close up, it's
bouncing
shaky.
It's bouncing all over the place. They can't lock down like a single... I'm not saying you have to lock down a visual style. A lot of it can be very effective by breaking rules. But this doesn't have any rules to break. And a lot of the time, it just seems to happen at random, especially the cinematography. There are shots in here that I don't understand why they need to be this way. And they just seems like they were calculated.
People's heads are cut off, like, part way.
People's heads are, like, partially cut off. There are shots where characters are just randomly out of focus. This is not fly in a film. My favorite shot in the whole movie, in terms of shots that absolutely do not make any sense whatsoever, is during the final chase scene. Because there's this quick shot that's zooming past the main character. He's clinging to the side of a truck. And then it keeps going. And then it keeps going for a few seconds, sort of straight towards the eye of the storm. And then it corrects its direction slightly by like 30 degrees and keeps going towards the eye of the storm for like 2 or 3 more seconds. And then randomly cuts before we even really get to process the directional change. It's one of the most baffling choices of cinematography in the whole movie, because you look at the shot and think, why did we need to see this? That's kind of the whole visual storytelling aesthetic of the film. It's like, filmmaking's a matter of what's in the frame and what's not. That's the Scorsese quote. But why do we need to see any of this? Why are we watching anything that we are watching right now? What is the reason why you have chosen this shot or this cut? It doesn't make any sense.
There are you can't really see what's going on because it's one of those action movies. I counted about 3 cool action moves. One of them was a decent thing at the end with Maggie Grace, and the car hits a bump and then she grabbed the machine gun as it flies up. That was neat. Yeah. Another one was...
I wish they didn't cut it all to hell, so I was like, wait, who has the gun in that? I had no idea who had the gun in that moment. It looked like they both had guns, but they also both didn't, so I wasn't really sure. And then she starts sort of machine gunning the guy who apparently has problems with women, and then he just sort of bounces around in the air. He just kind of like bounces around.
Bouncing around.
He just bounces like it like suspends him in the air when he's getting shot.
And he, and also another scene that had decent action. So I really thought that the meteorologist car, the like truck thing, the tank, was going to be used in the final chase scene. It was going to be used in multiple car chases. It was going to be their main vehicle.
It was going to be this movie's war rig.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean,
disappointingly, it wasn't.
But it did have one cool. It had like gadgets on it. It had like the thing where it
had Bond gadget. It had spikes and it could find radio towers.
Like a real truck, one of these trucks. And like there's a scene where it just stops, it nails its stuff to the ground with these spikes, and then they have a car hit it.
Well, I think you need to hold off on hitting the table. You're rattling.
Oh, I'm sorry. It hits the truck, and it crashes.
That is pretty cool scene, yeah.
But they don't really use the truck for any cool action sequences after that.
And the third cool action beat, can I describe this one?
You can.
It is the hubcaps.
It is the hubcaps.
Oh, God, the hubcaps. Oh, God. Okay, let me explain this. So, this is in the middle of sort of gale force winds in this, right after the heroes have pulled down the bad guy's satellite. The heroes have pulled down the bad guy's satellite relay. And this is right after the bad guys sort of lightly bump this highly armored truck into a gas station, and it explodes. And not the gas station. The gas station doesn't explode first. The truck explodes first. and then it explodes the gas station, and it's just exploding for no reason. And then sort of these bad guys, one of whom is guy with problems with women's brother, gets out of the truck. Just so you know the current state of this, Max has his head slumped over on the table in front of me in disbelief.
Oh,
and the brother of guy who has problems with women, apparently, according to Maggie Grace, is shooting at meteorologist, and meteorologist suddenly cuts down this random sack full of hubcaps that is in the middle of the street.
I just want to point out, all the bad guys really want to do is get Maggie Grace to give them the code so that they can get the money and leave.
Yeah. And so our protagonist gets this random sack of hubcaps that's lying in the middle of the street, and then starts picking them up one after the other and hurling them like frisbees down the street with the gale force winds. And then one of them goes flying straight into this brother's chest. It impales him, and he falls over dead. It's insane.
It was a brutal and creative way to kill someone who just wanted.
But it's also hilarious. It's also hilarious because it's a kind of elaborate, like James Bond movie death.
Yeah,
I'm disappointed there was no one-liner after it. This was a death that deserved, if not a Bond one-liner, then at the very least a Jean-Claude Van Damme one-liner.
I guess I'm gonna cap off your life with this hubcap. And then the wind sucks him up because it changes speeds at random.
Really nice to meet you.
But yeah, it seriously, like, these guys.
You've been axled.
They just brutally murdered.
I dare you to come up with a worse pun than that.
No. Yes. Anyway, let's talk about, if we're talking about the hubcap scene, I'm going to talk about my favorite scene, or we will, about the mall scene.
The mall scene! Oh god, this is the best part of the movie. This is the funniest part of the... I have actually, legitimately... I think What We Do in the Shadows was the last time where I laughed this much in a theater. I was nearly asphyxiating during the scene because it's the funniest thing in existence. Max, describe the scene because I can't.
Okay, I'm just gonna set it up. As I said earlier, the plan was Maggie Grace calls Kirkland's signature Hans Gruber and says, so I'm pretty sure she knows that he doesn't want to kill hostages. So she says, all right, how about this? You release 2 hostages. I'll go with you. I'll put in the code, and then you release the rest of the hostages. The 2 hostages she wants is meteorologist brother Breeze and random
government man.
Random government man who is there.
Also, what was the thing in? Oh god, I just remembered another dropped plot thread. What was the thing in the beginning with the guy who was in the military? Who she's talking to and clearly has a relationship with, does he ever get on her?
There was this exposition to say that
it was like he had a relationship with it. Also, there's a point in this movie where she mentions like something happened to me in Utah, and they never tell you what it was.
Yeah, I'm wondering
it doesn't
what that was.
Matter. It doesn't. But get back to the mall scene.
I would be surprised.
This scene is glorious. Maybe we should save the mall scene for last.
Oh, we're already into it.
All right, let's already get into it. We can talk about the final chase scene last.
But so. I'm guessing the thing she did in Utah was like probably brutally murder more people who are just maybe like.
I wouldn't be surprised.
A pickpocket. Someone was doing a pickpocket and she beat them to death with a hammer because that's.
I wouldn't be surprised if she was testing a nuclear weapon.
But she says, so, I think that's a fair deal. If I was Maggie Grace, I would be like. Yeah, save this guy's brother and my friend, and I'll give you the code, and you could get this money that otherwise would be destroyed. So, the police people who are added to the group, the gang...
After the sheriff's secret plan within a secret plan backfires when he said... When
he just gets shot.
When Kirkland's signature Hans Gruber decides, you know what, I can just shoot this guy.
Yeah.
They show up.
He only shoots people when he has to. Except one time... He shoots 2 people, one when he has to and one just because he was furious. But so the police bring them in, and so to set up, Maggie Grace and meteorologist put on harnesses and attach themselves.
And they say something incomprehensible about air pressure. That's sort of supposed to set up, and they're checking these gauges for air pressure all the time.
And then the brother says, I'm just waiting for the plan, bro, from the bottom floor, because they're yelling at each other.
And there are, 2 actually good shots in there, because there's this sort of shots in their exchange that are framed by the escalators, and I like that framing. It's kind of like, it almost looked a little Kubrickish for a moment, but they cut away from that for like one, and it's like, they're each a second long.
And
you're rattling the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so he shouts, what's the game plan? So at this point, the police must be, like, really suspicious. Like, wait, you're not going to do this deal, are you? And then, all right, you can take it from here.
All right, so I may need your help on this one. At this point, the air pressure has reached a certain level that they don't really explain to us before. Because Maggie Grace and meteorologist are hooked up on ropes from this extreme sports store because it is a Rob Cohen movie and extreme sports had to figure in somewhere. So Maggie Grace grabs a flare gun and shoots it through the ceiling, and all of physics goes insane. You try to describe what happens because I can't put it in words. It's magical.
I don't know what their plan, their end game was. They shoot the ceiling, glass shards fall, and I guess maybe start cutting them, but I don't know the bad guys. I don't know why it doesn't also hurt the hostages and the main characters. And then some people just fly out into the ceiling.
Because all the air starts getting sucked up through the skylight. Because it turns into a giant vac. Max's head is hung in shock again.
Just tired.
And the Hurricane Heist does that to you. And they just go shooting up through the ceiling, for no real reason other than that they need to go shooting up the ceiling. And then our heroes just go flying up on these ropes, and they just shoot up in the air, and they just bounce around above this mall like weird CGI balloon people. And then all the rest of the people in the mall go flying up into the air and bouncing around like pinballs and ricocheting off of like the things as they just go flying into the sky. And it's the most ridiculous thing. And meanwhile, Breeze is in the middle of it, and he somehow escapes alive, even though we only barely see what he's doing.
I thought he went unconscious, but the fact that he didn't go
flying as well.
The fact that
I'm surprised they didn't accidentally kill him.
I think like the fact that they only killed the police officers is
it's a miracle of. I can't say science because physics has nothing to do with this scene.
And they just leave their brother, and they don't talk about him until he shows up again in a boat.
Yeah, it's baffling, but it's also hilarious because it's one of the funniest looking things. Because it's all like really cheesy, weird CGI, and just all physics seems to snap, and there is no consistent rule from 1 second to the next. And it's just, it's like something out of a Looney Tunes cartoon. It's hilarious. If this was done intentionally, it would be a comedic masterpiece.
I still don't know what their plan was.
It's like something out of The Naked Gun.
Just because of their terrible plan, I don't know what their game plan was. How do they know that they won't now start executing the dozens of hostages that they have with the soldiers? She and meteorologist guy just
really had a bad plan there.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with their police work there.
It's the funniest thing ever created. And I think we also need to talk about the final chase scene because there's a lot of really good and hilarious stuff in that final chase scene. Okay, starting with the worst getaway drivers in human history. Let me take this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the final chase scene relies on sort of these three different trucks that are sort of carrying the money out of through the eye of the storm, which you've already mentioned is really inconsistent. It just keeps changing locations, this wall of death. And so, the last truck is being driven by, not Buddy and Darling from Baby Driver. So they decide that, okay, we're getaway drivers driving this truck full of, like, $200 million of stolen money through the eye of a storm, right in front of this wall of death that will kill us if we lag behind. This is the best place on the planet to have sex. I am not kidding about this. They start having sex in the cab of the truck. Well, not Buddy is driving the truck in the middle of the eye of the storm, ahead of the eye of the death. Well, he's having sex with his girlfriend. And then clearly sex in a position that obscures his view of the road.
And so you think that there's gonna be...
This is the worst getaway driver in human history.
And so the audience,
if Baby from Baby Driver and the driver from The Driver and also the driver from Drive saw this guy, they would lose all faith in humanity. Because this man is horrible at his job.
I mean, you think... So you're expecting a high-speed car chase, and you're excited. They've lost their cool meteorologist truck. So out of nowhere, they're just in a different truck. They're in a different truck, right behind them. I don't know how they got there or how they found them, but they're right behind them. None of the trucks see them, and they just
One of my favorite shots is where you see that truck, and after they've jumped off of it onto the back of this military truck, which makes things so easy to follow in the final action sequence because it's definitely easy to try to trace two vehicles that look exactly like each other.
It's three vehicles.
Or two, because depending on the shot, the number constantly changes because you can't really tell where anything is. So it's just either two trucks or three. I'm not sure because it just keeps changing.
So
they
hijack the couple...
They hijack the sex truck. That's a phrase I just said. I am not believing I just seriously said the phrase, they hijacked the sex truck in an actual film review.
And then they're on, like, and then I guess, I don't remember if he jumped onto it. I just know that somehow meteorologists...
The football play.
Okay. So then he somehow appears on another truck and hijacks that as well.
And this is where Maggie Grace has the showdown with has her "you have issues with women" moment, and then kills the guy.
And then,
because that's clearly helping your case in this moment.
And then I don't know if Rob Cohen understands football.
So at the start of this movie, the dad is just in the first scene. The dad's trying to distract young meteorologist and young Breeze from the hurricane that's coming down by having them memorize football patterns. And they mentioned this one football pattern that I cannot remember the name of.
Omaha, 2015.
Omaha 22, I think. And then they sort of do this Omaha 22 pattern with trucks.
Well,
try to do it. I'm not sure what. It's very convenient that the pattern that they were memorizing in the hurricane helps them stop this bad guy.
It's the closest thing we have to a recurring theme in this movie, this football play. But I don't know this football play would include you're right behind the person with the ball.
You're both pincing the quarterback and then start bouncing him from one side to the other.
And then you just step in front of him and block them until the eye of the storm meets the quarterback or whoever has the ball.
That's how football works. Football can only be played in hurricanes. That's why the Super Bowl is so expensive.
There's no play that could possibly be designed.
And then we get to our main villain's death. Then we get to the death of Kirkland's signature Hans Gruber, which is hilarious in itself. Because Kirkland's signature Hans Gruber gets kind of forced back into the eye of the hurricane, the wall of death, and then
and it's very unexciting.
And then the back of his truck gets pulled off with all the money flying out of it and disappears in the eye of death. And then he looks back at it and shouts, "Damn you!" at the hurricane. And then the hurricane clearly hears that and gets pissed, because then it just belches the back of his truck out at him, falling on top of the front of his truck and killing him in one of these silly... it's not even it's barely the third silliest death in the movie. It doesn't even crack the top 5 silliest deaths in the movie. Because counting the opening with the dad getting rolled over with silo, the hubcaps, and everyone who dies in the mall scene, and the inexplicably exploding truck, and the sheriff who gets died, it's barely even in the top 10 dumbest deaths in this movie.
That was so good, though. And, like, the fact is, the bad guy's truck was just, like, he was tailing the other 2 trucks. He was right behind them. Yet the storm was strong enough to open the back and suck the back of the truck up into the air and down. But the trucks, just a few, like, a foot in front of it, are fine. You know, they're just busy driving. And then one of the trucks fails, and they have to jump onto this one truck.
And then, not Buddy and not Darling die, which is a shame, because I kind of like them. And then the movie ends.
I don't even...
And then the movie ends. That's basically the end of the movie. I'm not kidding. Like, after this, the movie basically just stops.
Yeah, so now before Maggie Grace makes a joke, it says, "Oh, we still have $200 million in the back. Why don't we go to Mexico or something?" And then she's like, "I'm kidding." And you're like, okay, but that was a bad joke because a whole lot of people just died over this money that was going to be shredded anyway.
And then they drive away, and then suddenly, and then out of nowhere, pops up on screen, directed by Rob Cohen, and that's the end of the movie. And that's the end. The movie stops.
The
movie just runs out of plot and stops in its tracks. And it's like, yep, well, that's the Hurricane Heist. Why don't you get out of the theater? Goodbye. Hope you have fun.
The Eye of the Storm is gone now. It's just disappeared. This huge, massive storm.
And it's just a sunset. It's just a nice sunset.
Yeah, it just ends. You know, the storm is gone. It's just...
Storm is gone. Everyone else is dead.
Until the sequel.
They're probably going to be facing... They're probably all going to be facing official reprimands for the amount of people they killed. But whatever. They're all driving to Florida.
Congratulations. You made sure that those... the group of a dozen people didn't steal that $600 million that was going to be shredded otherwise.
Yes. The Hurricane Heist. One of the most useless stories in human history.
Plus I'm assuming those dozen soldiers who died because we just forgot about them in the room. I would love that.
But we don't need time for that because we need time to show all 30 of the film's producers.
I would love it if there's a post-credit scene where Maggie Grace just looks and says, "Oh crap, we forgot the soldiers," and then they are.
I know we didn't stay for a post-credit scene. I want there to be a post-credit scene where I hope that the post-credit scene was a setup for different natural disaster. Like, I hope the sequel is the tsunami heist.
They go
monsoon heist.
They go up to a meteorologist and Maggie Grace and say, "I want to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative."
No, it's Gerard Butler, and it's like, "I want to talk to you about the Geostorm Initiative."
I thought you were going to go with the Dark Universe joke, but that was Russell Crowe, not Gerard Butler. Anyway, that was
the Hurricane Heist. It is an absolute train wreck, and you need to see it. I cannot recommend this movie enough for how bad. Oh my God, we just went an hour and 15 minutes describing the plot of the Hurricane.
It's an hour and 40-minute movie, and
we just covered about 75% of the movie trying to explain what happens, and we barely even hit 25% of the things that happened in this movie. This movie is insane. The only way we can really describe this is by not describing it and you going to see this movie, because it is astonishing. This movie is staggeringly inept on every level, and it's amazing.
Think about it like this. Everyone's complaining Hollywood's running out of ideas. We either got remakes, reboots, readaptations, whatever, sequels, prequels. This is an original idea.
This is an original idea. And in the right hands, like, give it to someone who could have really had fun with this. It could be a really, like, legitimately killer B movie. Like, Mad Max Fury Road meets Ocean's 11. That's an amazing premise. Like, who would have done that? I don't know. Who would have done that justice?
George Miller, of course.
George Miller would have done that justice, but, like...
But...
yeah, that would have been fun, but...
you know, this is what you get for wanting original ideas. This might be...
This is an original idea, and
Hollywood saying this is...
you want original ideas? Here's an original idea. We got the Hurricane Heist for you.
Yeah. And from then on, Hollywood never released an original movie again. Part of...
or at least not Entertainment Studios Motion Pictures. Why did you name your studio that?
While this movie by itself wasn't probably worth the ticket price, the fact that this is in theaters and you might not see a movie like this for a while in theaters.
You are never going to see another movie in theaters where our heroes turn a mall into a giant vacuum and then bounce around in the air like CGI balloons. Well, people just go flying up into the sky. You are never going to see another... you're probably not going to see another movie in theaters with that in it. So it's just worth that.
This is completely different, but this is this year's Bye Bye Man.
No. The Bye Bye Man was vastly more competent than this.
The Bye Bye Man
had real high-name actors in it. The Bye Bye Man had Doug Jones and Carrie Ann Moss and Faye Dunaway. This
just
has
exploding, just spontaneously combusting.
Just spontaneously combusting Faye Dunaway. But if there was, and it had like incompetent plot, and it had that scare scene where the Bye Bye Man progressively moves closer in the library. But it was so much more competent and well put together, and just more coherent than the Hurricane Heist. We are comparing the Bye Bye Man positively to this movie. I think that should give you an idea of what you are in for with the Hurricane Heist.
Stacy Title, we owe you an apology.
I am so sorry, Stacy Title. I was way too hard in your movie. This movie.
If you could see what was happening to the action a little better, I would totally recommend this.
If you're a filmmaker, I think you need to see this, because this is the ultimate masterclass in here's how to not make a movie.
How not to write a script, how not to write characters.
A script, how not to use good actors. And that's the thing, the cast is legitimately, I'd say the cast is legitimately qualified. Like, there are some good actors, I'd say, in this movie. The cinematographer actually did he do any decent? He shot Captain America: The First Avenger. He shot the first Captain America movie. That's like a pretty well shot movie. the good people worked on this movie. It's just none of the pieces fit together in any way.
Honestly,
I like that it's produced by a company called Foresight Unlimited, because if you really had unlimited foresight, you probably wouldn't have made the Hurricane Heist.
Honestly, I think what probably happened was the 3 producers each had a different idea, and one said, let's have a story about a hurricane. No, let's do a story about a heist. No, one story about a police officer who betrays this group of robbers. No, let's do one about a mall turning into a vacuum. No,
let's do one about a meteorologist. Let's do one about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Let's do one about urination. And Rob Cohen just goes up to them and says, guys, you're all right. We can make all of your movies.
Yes,
and the Hurricane Heist is born.
Go see this in the theaters. Buy a ticket. And
bring friends. Bring friends. So
buy
you
at the
all
theater,
can see
so no
how
one else.
So
no one buy at the theater, so you have it to yourself. I don't think personally that this was Fateful Findings or The Room level. It was Birdemic levels, and I say that because Birdemic was a little too slow to be up there with The Room and Fateful Findings, but it was. If you just watch individual parts, it's just like as a whole, this movie just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I give it a 10 out of 10. Solid, perfect movie.
All right. I don't want to give it a grade. I don't know what grade I can possibly give this movie. I don't even know how to grade something like this. But yeah. Thank you for listening. So we should probably try to do this a lot more. So we'll try to do that. What's coming out this week?
We have Pacific Rim Uprising.
I thought that was next week.
Oh, it is. I'm thinking of Tomb Raider's coming out this week.
No, that's already out.
Okay. Isle of Dogs.
Oh yeah, Isle of Dogs comes out. Oh wait, no. Pacific Rim Uprising is this week. That's Pacific. We got Pacific Rim Uprising. We got Unsane. That's Soderbergh's new movie. I'm excited for that one.
I'm just waiting for God's Not Dead 3. We'll do an episode on that.
Oh yeah, I know you are going to drag me to that movie. I know you are going to.
God loves Pure Flicks. All right, thank you guys.
All right, thank you.
Cheers.
And take care.